Our second story pertains to Brazilian President Lula da Silva, who is making a lot of waves in the United States and in the West generally, where he is being rather virulently attacked as a result of several positions he has taken over the last month or so concerning issues of international relations and foreign policy. In particular, he is pursuing what he perceives to be the Brazilian national interest and the interests of the Brazilian people, but because it conflicts with American interests and American foreign policy, there's a lot of anger toward him and attacks on him that seems to be premised in the idea that the responsibility of a leader of a South American country is to remain subservient to the United States and pursue the interests of the United States at the expense of his own citizens. The United States has obviously had the Monroe Doctrine in place for 2 centuries that basically declares Latin America, South America to be our backyard, that we rule as sovereigns, which is extremely ironic since our fueling of the proxy war in Ukraine is based on the claim that Russia has no interest at all in what's happening right on the other side of its border in Ukraine. In fact, the most vulnerable part of its border, where Russia was twice invaded in 2 world wars in the 20th century through Ukraine by the West. And now, for the 3rd time in 105 years, German tanks are rolling toward Russia through Ukraine. And yet the argument is that Russia has no right at all to be at all concerned about the numerous countries acting in Ukraine right on the other side of its border. At the same time, the United States continues to claim that all of Latin America is ours to rule, and that Brazil or any other country in South America pursuing their own interests in a way that is independent of the United States is a cause for not just anger but threat. So let's first look at what Lula has said in particular about the war in Ukraine. Just about a month ago, the German chancellor visited Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, right after Germany had decided to send tanks to Ukraine, which is obviously a very controversial thing to do. We interviewed the German left-wing politician Saga Wagenknecht about 2 or 3 months ago, and she talked about how the trauma for Russia of seeing German troops headed to that region can't be overstated. Germany's playing a very dangerous game. But there are very few countries that actually have the munitions needed for these tanks. Brazil is one of them. The German chancellor went to Brazil, asked Lula to fuel the proxy war in the U.S., in Ukraine rather, by sending munitions and other resources, military resources, and Lula said no. Lula said, we're not going to send munitions for German tanks. We're not going to send weapons to Ukraine. That's not our war. We don't have a war with Russia or with Ukraine. We have a war with poverty and inequality and a poor standard of living in our own country. Why would we want to involve ourselves in the war in Ukraine? That's not our war. So that, to me, seems like the kind of thing I wish our leaders were saying. That's not our war. There's no reason we should involve ourselves in that. We should be using our resources for the benefit of our own citizens rather than sending $100 billion to President Zelensky and his cronies in Kiev, to a country that has long been the most corrupt in Europe. Who knows where that money is going? Remember, Rand Paul tried to simply attach auditing requirements to where that money was going, and Mitch McConnell implied he was doing the bidding of the Kremlin and blocked that appendum to the bill just to simply provide some safeguards on where the money was going. And just this week, there was an interview with the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin's primary deputy, by Jon Stewart, where he asked her about the $1 trillion a year, essentially, that we send to the military, to the Pentagon, and the fact that the Pentagon has only been audited 5 times in history and has failed the audit each time. So there's all kinds of reasons to worry about where this money is going. This huge sum of money we spend on the military and are now spending in Ukraine. And they want Brazil and Lula to do the same, to send money into that black hole. And he refuses. So here he is. He just visited China, which is Brazil's largest trading partner, and has been the growth of Brazilian economic, has been really the spur of Brazilian economic growth during the first time Lula was president from 2002 to 2010. And he was asked about his posture toward the war in Ukraine, and this is what he said. Let's show the video.
É preciso ter paciência para conversar com o presidente da Rússia, é preciso ter paciência para conversar com o presidente da Ucrânia, mas é preciso, sobretudo, convencer os países que estão fornecendo armas, incentivando a guerra, a pararem. Eu acho que a China tem um papel muito importante, eu continuo reiterando que a China possivelmente seja o papel mais importante. Agora, outro país importante é os Estados Unidos, ou seja, é preciso que os Estados Unidos parem de incentivar a guerra e comecem a falar em paz. É preciso que a União Europeia comece a falar em paz, para a gente poder convencer o Putin e o Zelensky de que a paz interessa a todo mundo e a guerra só está interessando, por enquanto, aos dois.
So, just to recap, and for those who listen to the show in podcast version who wouldn't have seen the English subtitles on the screen, Lula is essentially saying that he's trying to do everything possible to work with the president of Russia and the president of Ukraine to forge a peace. He doesn't want to fuel the war. He wants to find a diplomatic resolution to stop it. And then he went on to say the other important country in this equation is the United States, because the United States has been from the start and continues to incentivize the war, to encourage the war, by not only sending huge amounts of weaponry into that theater and also by pouring unlimited sums of money onto Zelensky's head, but blocking on several occasions attempted diplomatic talks in order to resolve the war. The U.S. doesn't want an end to the war. It never has. It wants to weaken Russia as much as possible. And it's not trying to protect Ukraine or protect Ukrainians. It's trying to sacrifice Ukraine and Ukrainians at the altar of its geopolitical goal of weakening Russia. For some reason that I think is very difficult to understand. The prior two presidents, President Obama, President Trump, had the same view of Russia, which is that Russia is not our enemy. They're not a threat to the United States. There's no reason to try and weaken them. We do business with Russia, or at least we did. Trump cooperated with Russia in Syria, so did President Obama. Russia hasn't attacked the United States. Why are we so obsessed with weakening Russia, especially with billions of dollars being sent, $100 billion so far authorized? So there was Lula saying, you can't talk about the war in Ukraine without talking about the fact that the United States is there cheering it on, is egging it on, is enabling the war to continue, is basically incentivizing Zelensky not to pursue diplomacy, because he's being told by the West and by the most powerful and the wealthiest country in the world, the United States, we will simply arm you and fund you to the end of time. You don't have to worry. Just keep fighting. And obviously, when the United States, the most powerful country militarily and financially, tells another country, we will back you until the very end with all the weapons and money you need, that, of course, is a way of encouraging the war to continue. And so Lula was saying, why would I do that as president of Brazil? Why would I send the resources of my people and my country to a war zone that has nothing to do with my country? And if we are going to end this war, we need the United States also to be on board with wanting the war to end, and yet right now it doesn't. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update. Catch our full shows for free, live weekdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Rumble, and join our locals community at greenwald.locals.com for all of my written journalism, exclusive after-show Q&As, and more.